here in Singapore. As soon as it hits 1800, 6:00 p.m., we shall begin the presentation. Currently got rain in Singapore, just for a change. If you hear a child crying in the background, it's mine. Don't worry, my wife is there looking after her. It's all good. Yes, Neil, this will be recorded, saved, and posted to my channel. Yes. Why does Singapore score so well in the IB, Lenny? That's maybe a topic for a different video. Okay, so what we're going to do this evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining this live stream on a Saturday. Well done, any students that have joined it. Clearly, it should be your day off, and teachers as well. It's your day off. So hopefully this shows the level of commitment and the level of concern, I suppose, as well, with the upcoming submission of internal assessment. Whether the exams go ahead or not, we still don't know. You can make your own bets on that. Okay, who am I? I've been a moderator for 5 years now. I've taught IB chemistry for 13 years in Japan, Malaysia, a place called Guernsey, which you might not know, or you might know. And currently I've been in Singapore for 4 years, commencing my 5th year as head of year 12. Okay. Each of the 3 IAs have been moderated. They're from going back, way back. So I've been moderating for 5 years, roughly 80 a year. There were 160 last year. So somewhere between 400 and 500 IAs I have moderated in my time as a moderator. I should really give up soon. There will be 5 minutes after each IA for you to ask any questions. I will compare the moderator's score with the delegate score. So thank you for those delegates that put their scores into the Google form. We can compare the two together and see how closely we agree or not. And then there'll be 10-15 minutes at the end. I'm trying to keep it to 1 hour. So if you are listening on the recording, I suggest you, if you've not done so already, stop the video now, click the link under the video, have a look at the internal assessments. Every student deserves, I think, at least 1 hour of moderation or viewing from the person that's marking it. Clearly, I'm not going to spend 1 hour over each one today. So I'm expecting everyone listening live has seen all of the internal assessments we're going to go through. So if you're just watching the video raw without seeing them, it might not make a great deal of sense, but that's just a note of caution to begin with. Okay, just to make it clear, I am not the IB, I'm not the International Baccalaureate Organisation. I do work for them as an examiner and a moderator, but that's kind of it. Okay. The function of this is for collaboration and for mutual support. In all honesty, when I started teaching IB in 2008, I was very, very nervous and very, very unsure about what we were doing in terms of marking of the IAs. And I'm sure many people are in the same position right now, and I'd like to do a little bit to help them from what I know now. So please subscribe to my channel for any future live stream information. When I asked delegates what they wanted to focus on today, you can see the results on the screen, I hope. Personal engagement and communication were not overly popular. Exploration, clearly some people are concerned, 62 people that responded. Analysis was way out in front. Clearly those uncertainties, significant figures, propagation of uncertainties are a major concern for people out there. And the evaluation, where students get bored, yawn, and typically don't do such a fantastic job on the evaluation. I also asked teachers or registrants, delegates, what they wanted to look at during this live stream. And the split was pretty much 1/3 primary and 2/3 database. Okay, so I've split this up. And I'm going to get food, have a nice stream. Thanks, Lenny. Cheers, mate. So it's going to be the databases first. And let's just jump straight into these and have a look at IA1. So I've got IA1 here. And I opened it just before the session. So if you just saw the marks there, just ignore that little bit. Here we are. This is the effect of structural isomerism on the boiling points of the first 6 aliphatic alcohols. It seems like a pretty clearly focused research question. It's got the IV and the DV, independent variable and dependent variable, in there. It then goes on. It seems quite weak, bringing out the whole new area in chemistry, isomerism. Did it? It needs a lot more expansiveness there. So as you can see, as I'm moderating and going through, I'm not making any judgments, any decisions until I've looked at the whole IA. I'm writing which criteria I'm talking about as I scribble through it. And this was how I would actually moderate on screen as well when I'm moderating for the IB. Okay. Is use some basic textbook information as the background, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with using basic textbook information as long as it's correct. And it does have quite a sparsity of examples. It seems like he didn't care that much about the ones that he put in. I would have expected at least half a dozen of each of these here. He's talking about chain isomerism, positional isomerism, without really explaining a great deal. And then some pretty limited examples, functional group isomerism, which is really nothing much to do with the research question. And that's one of the things which I pick up here during the IA, that everything that is in the IA should be addressing the research question. If it doesn't address the research question, we don't care. You're not going to get any marks for that. So if you just start thinking you're going to use some filler material, which we'll come back to shortly, you're not going to get any marks. So this is all fine. We've got geometric isomerism, EZ, cis-trans, optical isomers, chiral centers. It's just a copy from a textbook and it doesn't inform the research question. Okay, it mixes up here intra and intermolecular forces, which is pretty much a schoolboy error, if I dare call it that, and then copied verbatim from the textbook. A nice little excerpt from the Brown and Ford chemistry textbook, which I'm sure some of you use, on hydrogen bonding. And then here at the bottom of page 3, we have something which actually links to the research question. Okay, moving on. The language, I'm sure you noticed as you read this, the language is not actually kind of 100% correct, which is not a problem at all. Clearly, many EAL students, English ESL students, are writing the IAs, and that's never ever penalised. Okay, if we can pretty much guess the gist of what you're saying, we do give the benefit of the doubt, and we are instructed to mark positively. So we are to reward everything that is there, and not penalise too much what is actually missing. Okay. We then get this bit. This was my biggest misgiving with the whole internal assessment on IA1. And why don't I like it? Well, it's another copy from a textbook. It's talking about the solvent accessible surface area. Okay, potentially great extensions to the syllabus. Maybe you could have calculated some ionic radii. And again, I'm looking at the research question, which is the effect of structural isomerism on the boiling points of the first 6 aliphatic alcohols. So what does the surface area and solvent accessibility surface area have anything to do with it? I'm not convinced that that is anything to do with what this IA was set out to do. It comes up with a rationale, which is not really very well justified at all. And then it starts to lose focus. We now have 3 research questions. I'm sure everyone that was reading this IA thought 3 research questions. Is that even possible? Well, again, I'm going to give benefits of the doubt for now, but I do have an alarm bell at the back of my head. Okay, it's talking about isomerism in alcohols, primary, secondary, and tertiary. What's the relationship? Okay, to what extent does boiling points change as the number of carbon increases? That's another research question. And within each class of alcohol, with regards to boiling point, which affects the effectiveness of the hydrogen bond formed. And yet the research question is still the same at the beginning of the IA. So maybe this is development. Dark matter, please be kind. Culture of kindness, okay. Please go back to the research question. And if you find during your IA that your research and your investigation throws up something new, tell the marker that you found something new. You've changed your method, you've changed your research question to fit the new information, and change the research question. That shows great personal engagement, shows great exploration. The student has omitted to do that, so it just looks kind of a little bit random as he's going through. Now, he's used ChemSpider here. ChemSpider's great. Why is ChemSpider great? It's the same as NIST. It's based on hundreds of different databases, and it's correlated or collated together So that's nice. I'm quite happy with that one. He's explained his naming conventions. He's used some good appropriate sources. We've got some more of this solvent surface area stuff, which I'm beginning to get a pet issue with. The multifaceted dependence variable, I'll say that again, dependence variable, is okay for database. If you watch my How to Get 24 on a database, or the Smash the IA, the Pandemic Edition, I'm talking about many DVs, okay, because you need to have 10 hours worth of work. It needs to feel like 10 hours worth of study that you have invested your time in. Clearly, this is a biology student. They've used Pearson within their IA, and they've used an excerpt from their maths textbook to explain to us what the Pearson's correlation is. A note of caution on statistics. Okay, if you read the May 20 examiner's report, or if you watch my video on the May 20 examiner's report, the standard deviation is held up as not appropriate for a chemistry IA unless you have, I'd say, at least 25 pieces of data you're doing the standard deviation on. And here we have a paucity of data, and I would put a huge question mark on the appropriateness of the Pearson correlation on the data set that he is using, small as it is. Okay. That was unclear. And then he's put no correlation between the boiling point and van der Waals surface area. Is there not? Okay. He's then done another thing which students do quite a lot. They will find categoric data and they will plot it as continuous data and think that the moderator, or perhaps their marker, won't notice. This could as easily be a bar graph, okay? And if you read the examiner's report, as always, bar graphs are not appropriate for a chemistry IA. Many people, when I said that on the previous video, many people went nuts and said, how can it not be appropriate? Why can't I do a bar graph? Please speak to the IB. I'm just giving what the guidance is from the examiner's report. I'm not here to defend the decisions. Okay. This is a classic graph which is given by a student. I'm wearing glasses, as you can see. And even with my glasses, it is really quite difficult to see what on earth is going on there. Maybe I need to see my optician. Maybe I need to get better resolution on my iPad. I don't know. But clearly that could be made a hell of a lot clearer since it's such a critical graph, because it's the boiling point against the isomer code at the bottom, which is actually addressing the research question. This should be the thing that is fleshed out, the thing that is discussed, the thing that's held up as, wow, I found this. But it is not. Okay. He's then got a graph of boiling point against the first 3 tertiary alcohols. You can find this in the data booklet, I think, or very close to it. And is mixed up within the primary, secondary, and tertiary, with between the primary, secondary, and tertiary. Again, he mixed up inter and intra earlier in the IA. And he's done it again here. Okay. Description is quite weak, and then all of a sudden, we are quite surprised as we are reading, or I was. It's got these criteria here, and it seems that some of the theory is wrong, and we often find this. Please be careful with your chemistry. Make sure what you're saying actually makes sense. An alcohol with more substituents on different carbon atoms, regardless of size, would have a higher boiling point, as the presence of multiple substituents will affect the obstruction to a lesser extent. Are you still with me? More effective hydrogen bonds can form, hence higher boiling point. So I'm flabbergasted. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what he means there. Then we have a table of primary alcohols. That's great, but he has not put the units in. Average boiling point is 430.75. I don't know if that's degrees C or Kelvin or Fahrenheit, or I have no idea. There is no uncertainty. Again, if you look at my uncertainties video, you will find that if you're using a database, okay, you've only got one database that gives you data for your IA, plus or minus the last decimal place. The mark from the IB is for consideration of uncertainties, not for knowing that whoever did this experiment was uncertain plus or minus 0.5. You're just going to have to assume the last decimal place, because that's the precision which is quoted. And then if you put the units in, this would have been a pretty good data table. Oh, if you kept consistent decimal places as well. So there's quite a few number errors here. So we've got units, uncertainties, decimal places. It's kind of all over the place. He's then developed his own method of shading to tell us which alcohol has the highest boiling point, which is absolutely fine, but it's scanned in black and white. So I think it's red, yellow and green, I think it has, bless him, but we don't see that. So, okay, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but it is quite difficult to follow. Okay. Again, we've now got criteria B, same, change, personal engagements. Pretty good reflection on the journey here. He's put a statement about the structure was what is expected. He's changed the IA, he's changed the path of the IA. And whenever you say that within your internal assessment, that's fantastic personal engagement. You've cared enough to change what you were originally set out to do. Certainly I know from when students first start doing internal assessments, they will realise they've done something wrong and go, oh my gosh, throw it away, put it in the bin, let's start again fresh. No, record it. It's science, it's real. This is chemistry. It often doesn't go exactly as you expect it to go, right? Okay. So that shows method development. So we've got a table of secondary alcohols, same issues, no units, no uncertainties. Although his decimal place, no, there's 1, 2 with only one decimal place, and the rest are all 2 decimal places. So his number errors are going to get marks down for that as well. Same for tertiary alcohols. He's only found 3 tertiary alcohols. Does seem a little bit, he could have done more. So I put limited data set on there. And then the conclusion, does he address the research question? We're always looking for addressing the research question. The trend of boiling point is as such: primary greater than secondary, greater than tertiary, greater than ether. And all of a sudden an ether has popped up. So it's got quite a bit of filler, which I mentioned at the beginning, quite a bit of filler within the IA. Clearly he realised it was a bit short. And maybe he's filled a little bit too much, because this is a 20-page IA. 20 pages. No. Evaluation, I'd expect lots of references in here. He's got one reference that I can see. He does extend the syllabus a bit. His discussion of hydrogen bonding, I had to read 2 or 3 times. I think he knows what he's talking about. And then a nice bibliography at the bottom. Okay. So personal engagement, he has changed his path. He's altered his method as he's gone through. I think he has used quite a bit of filler. I've still not forgiven him for the solvent space filling thing. So let's have a look, if we can, at the delegates who completed the marking. What they felt was the score for this IA. So let's have a look. So personal engagement. I'm going to write these down because I won't remember them. Most participants thought that personal engagement was a 1. Only 30% thought it was a 2. Okay. Exploration. The majority of people thought it was a 4, but a fair number also thought it was a 5. So I'm going to put 4 to 5 on there, 4 to 5 from delegates. Analysis, a huge amount thought that it was 4. About a quarter felt it was 5. So that's another 4 to 5. Must have been a generous lot. Evaluation, the majority thought that that was a 5. Interesting. And communication, most people thought that was a 3, and 3/4 thought it was 3 to 4. So if I go, the delegates' low score was 1, 4, 5, 10, 14, 17, and your high score was 1, 2, 3, it was high score 20. So participants today thought that this IA was in the range of 17 to 20, which would have given it a 6, right? Yeah, they given it a 6. Let's have a look what happened. I think you saw this at the beginning. If you did, apologies, that was my overly generous participation. So I gave it 16 out of 24, which is 1 below the lowest score that the delegates, the majority of delegates, would have given. The IB, this was a few years ago, so this was when the top, middle and bottom sample are sent away, and then they do a distribution, skewed distribution across your results. They felt I was a little bit generous, and this ought to have been a 15. So I said personal engagement was a 2. The majority of delegates thought it was 1. I thought it was a 2 because there was lots of research. Bless him. He did put lots of effort in with the research at the back of the IA. He did change his method. It didn't upset me by saying since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to discover the effect of isomerism on boiling point. So I gave him a 2 on that. I thought that was fair. Exploration, I was 1 down to 2 down with the delegates who completed the form because the theory was not relevant to the research question. Pearson stats, Kajal, I can see. Pearson correlation is relevant. It seems just a filler. I would agree with you, Kajal. I think there was far too much filler, of which the Pearson correlation was too much. I think that's probably only the thing I've seen Pearson correlation used in chemistry IA. So I'd need to look up, but I've got a big question mark over that. And I've got to knock a mark off for the solvent accessible area. There's nothing to do with the research question. So I'd probably give that a 3. Analysis, inconsistent decimal places, missing units, missing uncertainties, just sloppy. The student knew how to do this, they've been told, bless them. He chose not to, so it's just a bit lazy. There's no way I could give him more than a 3. Delegates gave 4 to 5, so you're a generous bunch. Evaluation, the chemistry had errors. There were errors in the chemistry. I keep thinking for the IA, they need to put explicitly that there needs to be valid and reliable chemistry throughout the IA. That would be a great thing to put on the IA criteria, but not yet. But anyway, it still gets marked down for bad chemistry. There's no real graph. There's a bar chart masquerading as a continuous data line graph. So there's no way that can reach the high bands. I'm sorry, delegates, a 5 for evaluation. I disagree. End up with 3 to 4. And communication, just because of the number error and the bad chemistry in parts, it can't be more than a 3 for me, and delegates thought it was a 3 to 4. Okay, so 16 to 15, delegates gave it 17 to 20. So delegates, you're a generous bunch. You got your kids are very lucky to have you. Any questions you can type into the chat just while I get IA2 ready. Here we go. Oh, let's see what the delegates did first. That'll be fun. So delegates, IA2, what did you think? So IA2, for those eagle-eyed people, will notice that I've used this one before. I have used this one before in the database video, but if not, it's the first time you saw it, it's all good. So ligand close packing, personal engagement. Length, definitely Eric, was an issue, and communication may have even been down 2 to 3 for that. Yeah, absolutely. Baran, they could have moved to get it down to the 12 pages. I think that they should have removed all the filler stuff, all the surface area of solvent, the erroneous chemistry, the criterion that he was using, criteria A, criteria B. I think he copied that from somewhere. He didn't reference it. If he did, I'd like to sit down with him perhaps in retrospect and ask where that came from. But I don't think that needed to be in there. And all the extra stuff that wasn't addressing the research question, it would probably have taken it down to 8 pages, to be fair. Yes. Would you please share the IAs that have the comments on them? I say, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, forgive me. I will put the IAs under the video when it goes onto my YouTube channel. Okay? No worries. How are students assessed on risk assessment in database or ignored? If you go to the guidelines for examiners, which I believe are sent to all delegates, and if you don't have this guidelines to internal assessment examiners, please message me at the contact on my channel. And it does say somewhere in here that personal engagement, exploration, background. So I'm looking for where it says safety, quality. There we go, safety, ethics and environmental. In the event of there being clearly no issue with safety, ethics or environmental impacts, there may be no statement required. If there are no relevant safety, ethics, or environmental impact factors, then this descriptor is excluded from assessment. However, I will give a little note of caution on that one, because you are using a database that has somehow generated data. I would even put the comment in, if you don't have any safety, ethical, or environmental, then please put there were no safety, environmental, or ethical issues with the creation or the authorship or the curation of this internal assessment. That seems to me like a reasonable thing to do, just to cover your back. Remember, moderators, I don't know what your perspective on moderators is, but they are human beings. Many of them are brand new to moderation. Many of them have not done it before. And just to be on the safe side, I would put the comment in that there were no viable or available safety, ethical, or environmental issues with the creation of this internal assessment. It just covers that base, just for one simple statement. Does that make sense? When is use of Pearson coefficient appropriate? You know what? I'd need to look it up. I'm not familiar with that treatment. I would probably apply the same rationale as standard deviation. It needs to be a much bigger data set than the 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it was, alcohols that he was using for the effect on boiling point. Okay, just a basic last decimal place, percentage uncertainty, absolute uncertainty, which everyone wants to do. The mark is for uncertainty, not for how you do it. Okay, so there's no point showing off if it's just going to trip you up. You don't get any extra marks for showing off like that. No one likes to show off. Okay. Ligand close packing. John, I'll answer that in a second, mate. Okay. Ligand close packing. Most people thought that was a 2 for personal engagements. Exploration, they thought that was somewhere green purple, 4 to 5 on ligand close packing. Kajal, that kind of backs up what I've just said a little bit. The guidance to examiners says they don't need to put it in. They can still score 5-6 band if they don't have it. So I still suggest the safety net of putting a statement in. There are no safety, ethical, environmental issues associated with this IA because it's a database IA. Something like that, and then the moderator is no doubt that you have thought about it at least. Okay, Kajal, thank you. Analysis, we think it's purple-green, so we think that's 4 to 5. And evaluation, purple-green again, so it's 4 to 5. 4 to 5. Communication, loads of people think it's 3. 3/4 of people think it's 3 to 4 on communication. So the low for delegates, scores on the doors, is 4, 8, 10, 14, 17. And the high for delegates is 7, 12, 17, 4, 21. Wow, delegates. 70 to 21. Remember that mark band for IA2, which is here. Lano, I will probably not post them in the Facebook group. The IB Chemistry Teacher Facebook group is probably already suffered enough from my numerous posts. I'll just post them. I'll put them as a bit.ly, a link underneath this video when it posts to YouTube, probably tomorrow. I won't have time today, Lanos, but within 24 hours they'll be underneath the video. Okay. To what extent does the size of a central atom affect the molecular geometry? And this IA was how many pages? This was just an obscene amount of pages, and I think I needed 2 cups of coffee just to get through this one. Okay, let's have a look. You're talking about VSEPR and LCP. There's no reference there. I'm unhappy there's no reference. Tell me where you got this information about LCP. It's an atypical research question, which most IAs will be, an atypical research question. And it's about optimizing a model, making a model. That's great. For bond prediction, we can ditch the effect of X on Y, optimize a model. I'm already a fan, I like it. Using ligand close packing and VSEPR. It talks about Lewis, and then here we see the first mention of this chap Gillespie, 2009. And I think I lost count of the number of times the word Gillespie occurred in this IA. But anyway, let's go on. There's some confusion here because the LCP, you have to look it up and read it. And as moderators we do if you're using something beyond the syllabus that we're not familiar with or have not done for 20 years at university, which is probably my case. I've never done LCP. Looked it up, and everything that bonds around the central atom is considered a ligand. I know that's in IB, a ligand donating, a lone pair donating to a vacant d orbitals, all that stuff. That's what we're familiar with. This is a different take on it, so we're not going to slaughter him for that. That's okay for now. He's then got the IB definition, ligands, covalent bond, central transition metal atom from ibchem.com. We're all familiar with that. Then we get a table. I don't like that table. I don't like that table at all. There are no units, there's no uncertainty, last decimal place. Gillespie. There are 4: phosphorus trihydride, fluoride, chloride, bromide. Where's iodide? Does iodide not get a mention? Where is this? This theory only works when electronegativity of the bonded atoms has low electronegativity. Hydrogen has low electronegative values. It does because it's electropositive. Maybe you could have put that. Research is quite limited. Again, only 4. He's mixed up his shapes here. Mixed up his shapes. And some images, I felt, some images would help here. If you're discussing something which is beyond the IB syllabus, and the moderator, again, a moderator is just a chemistry teacher. That's all I am, a humble chemistry teacher. And we do our best to reward what you've done. But give us a hand. If you're doing something a little bit beyond, put some images in. Okay. He talks about AX3 as a bonding arrangement, and then talks about BF4 minus. So it just does seem a bit babbling, if you like. So he's mixing up his root structures with his actual examples, and they don't follow the root structure that he's talking about. If I quote a definition from the Chemistry HL book, how do I do in-text citations? If you put, I don't know, Catherine and Brown or Jeff News or whatever it happens to be, whichever date that you're using, and then give the full reference. I would encourage my kids to give the full reference in the bibliography with the ISBN number or some form of tracking number. As long as you consider, there's no style of reference given for the IB. Some use Harvard, etc. How do I cite pictures from the textbook or the reference that they came from? As long as it's Googleable, searchable, traceable by the moderator, that's all that we're after. Okay. This Gillespie chap, I think he gets a full mention in the bibliography at the end. He's looking at the LCP model. There's no awareness of limitations. I found as I read this IA, again it comes back to the chemistry. He's always talking, I don't know if you noticed, he's always talking about molecules as static, non-dynamic things, rigid, held at these bond angles. There's no mention of movement of the molecules, of movement of the atoms in the molecule, and repelling and attracting, and the dynamic nature of what a molecule is. It seems he still is working with this ball and stick model and rigidly held in space. It's unclear if he's talking about size or charge here. The larger central atom pushes the ligands closer. The central atom pushes the ligands closer and decreases it, but it doesn't say why. Is that the size of it? Is it the charge of it? Has something come in to move it? Again, the chemistry needs a lot more explanation than he's actually giving us. 28 pages. Okay, so I think what page are we on here? We're 4 or 5 pages in, and we begin with the elucidation of the variables. So 28 pages. Let's keep going. It tells us the sites that he got from. It is important to note that I will be using the covalent radii instead of the atomic radii. Okay, this is sensible as I'm calculating bond angles, and bond angles are produced when 2 molecules are bonded together, in this case in a covalent bond. I do have a problem with the chemistry there, clearly. 2 molecules bonded together, it could be, but it's normally 3 or more atoms bonded together would give a bond angle. So there seems to be a weak grasp of what it's actually doing. It's mentioned uncertainty, which is good. I've tried to consider several uncertainties from the data, argues why it is correct. And then we've got these calculations here. He did generate these calculations himself. He did just dream them up one day, which is great. And he's basically just taken the size of the hydrogen ligand, I'm not sure about that, with the central atom over the size of the central atom. So he has shown some personal engagement on there. Again, we've got hydrogen as being electronegative. It's positive unless it's a hydride, as we all know. and no attempt at uncertainty in his data table, although he does have units, which is better than the previous one that we saw there, so not as bad as the previous one. Atomic radius are not empirically 100, it says. Setting them to 100% allows us to see ratios adjust accordingly. So that's an assumption that he's done. He then mentions graph 1. Did anybody find graph 1? I looked for it for a good 5 minutes of my life. I could not find graph 1. So he's referencing a graph which I don't think actually exists. Okay. To test the reliability of the model, I'll try and calculate the bond angle of Bi bismuth trihydride in a covalent bond. So he's done that. A different one, this is Cordero et al., 2008. He's then got percentage uncertainty. I think this is 79.1%. Where is that data from? I'm not sure where it comes from. Rationale is poorly executed. Again, in common with earlier in the internal assessment, he's been a bit lazy. It's just, you can look all these up. NIST have reams and reams of this data, and he's only included 4. And then he's come up with another hypothesis and another table with no uncertainties, and it's raw data only. All he's done is just taken the data from the database and popped it into a table. He's done a minor calculation on percent difference. There's not really that much data processing going on. Third hypothesis, more tables. Fluorine ligands. Okay. Ligand, is it a ligand? Experimental bond angle. I'm not sure where that came from. Where's the uncertainty? But it does have a unit on the 84.3. It doesn't have a unit on the 22.7 or the 107. So a bit more laziness. All discussion suggests a fixed molecule. No movement when they are indeed dynamic, which I would like to have seen in this internal assessment. This boy seems to like 4s. Everything's in 4s. We've got 4 elements here. No more. 4 in the first table, 4 in the second table. He talks a lot, right? He talks a lot. Overall, observed bond length in Armstrongs. No uncertainty, but it is consistent decimal places. And now we do have 5 pieces of data. So I'm quite happy now. And now it's Jeffrey et al. Rather than Gillespie, and Gillespie turns up again. I don't know about anybody else. When I'm marking an IA, when I'm asking kids to write an IA, I find tables a fantastic boon to help in understanding what on earth they're talking about and conveying that they have met the criteria. I'll give a little plug to Andrew Weng. Andrew Weng's IA rubrics and templates for creating an IA lead a student to say, what's the factor, how was it affected, what was the amount if you can calculate it, and how would you fix it? That sort of thing. And then a moderator can just go tick, 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 rather than looking through here and going, okay, there are 2 space fill models of antimony trifluoride and nitrogen trifluoride. I'm sure there's some lone pairs of electrons, but I can't quite see them. I'm not sure how helpful that is. So Lana, you've put, how do I cite pictures? Not like this, okay, not like this, bless him. So I need to see a link to the website is absolutely fine. If I'm moderating and look at a link to a website, or to, even if it's ibchem.com, I might just go and quickly check it and stick it into Google and make sure it's a valid reference. It's the reference that really exists. And in-text citations, I think I've answered that one. Just put the title in and then give a full reference in the bibliography. Bond angles, consistent decimal places, limited data, no uncertainty. Conclusion, we've got central atom here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is just sequential. Again, this is categoric data. It's not continuous data. Poorly discussed, no attempt at a numerical discussion. Yes, Lana, that would be acceptable. For full marks in evaluation, even if it's a database like this, we need to talk about the uncertainties. We need to talk about the research question. We need to talk about any random errors which we could dream up. We're going to have to dream some up, or some systematic errors. We're going to have to dream some up if we can. I know databases are just rock hard. They're so much harder than primary data IAs. When we do the primary data IA shortly, it's so much easier from a student's point of view, teacher's point of view, moderator's point of view. Push. And we are trying, trust me, we are trying to give as much credit as we possibly can. But the chemistry has to be correct, the numbers have to be correct, and there must be some nod to what the IB are expecting. As cryptic as it sometimes is, I know that it's cryptic. I know that the criteria on the syllabus is just the bare skeleton, and just following those, and even the exemplars on TSM, they're pretty weak. I don't agree with half the marks on the TSM. That's me. I think the best place is the examiner's reports. Look at the 2020, 2019 examiner's report. There's so much golden nuggets in there, which will help all students and all teachers to create good quality IAs, because none of us want to let the kids down. That's why you're here right now. That's why I'm here right now. Every kid deserves a fair chance in this COVID time that we find ourselves. Sorry, got off track. Okay, he's now copied them from a textbook. He talks about bond angles, which we all know. Again, static molecules, no exemplars in there. And we're on page 18, and he's got 10 pages of appendix. Okay, I did feel that some of these would have been better in the actual body of the IA. Some of them look like quite nice trends, actually. And he's got percent difference. He's done a bit of processing. That's all good. But it is 28 pages long. And a moderator can just go to level 12 at the most, and then just go, that's it, I'm done. They can. I would never. I don't think many would, but they can if they want to. And then look, he's done a wonderful data table in the appendix, which no one is required to read, with consistent decimal places, units, and an uncertainty. Why did he wait until right at the end? I have no idea. Okay. Bibliography, there's Gillespie. He's got quite a few in there, quite a few things that he's looked at. So, the scores from the delegates was a low score of 17 and a high score of 21. You thought that was a 6 to 7 IA. I gave it 13. Sorry to say, I gave it 13. Okay. The IB, or moderation, came back as 15. I'm very honest here. Even moderators get moderated. Okay. PE, 1 out of 2. There were just too many errors in chemistry throughout. Did not remove the appendix from the new syllabus. They can still put them in, you just don't have to look at them. How many strengths, weaknesses would you recommend? I would probably go for 3 and 3, but it's more about systematic and random errors and the magnitude of those systematic and random errors if you can get them. Okay, you have to do your best with that, I'm afraid. It's easy to do primary, it's very difficult to do on database. I know it is. Look at the examiner's report. They're still looking at addressing magnitude of errors and quantification of errors in the evaluation to get the top bands. Okay, if it's just, I often read evaluations that are almost like a year 8 EPI, for want of a better word, and it's just this worked really well because I chose the right glassware and I wore the right socks and all that sort of stuff. We want quantification. Okay, how close was the calculated value to the actual value? Why was there such a difference between different websites? Even as tenuous a link, as tenuous a reason as you can find between different websites, why they have different answers. Even if you look at the instrumentation, then that would be absolutely fantastic, and that would hit the criteria for the top boxes. I'm sorry, there's no easy answer to that one. It does depend on the actual topic of the IA and how to actually address that. And I'm afraid at the end of the day, that comes down to the capability of the teacher and the student working together to get the chemistry correct in that discussion. Okay. Exploration, I gave it 2 or 3. Delegates gave it 4 to 5. There's no safety, ethical, environmental. It does not lead to continuous data and no consideration of uncertainty. So 2, maybe 3 out of 6. Analysis, precision is omitted. And then graphs are not in the IA. The graphs are in the appendix. Why? I'm still not sure why I put them there. So I give that a 3 or a 4. Evaluation was weak. There was no attempt at quantification of the magnitude of the errors. There was no reference back to the research question, and the uncertainty treatment was weak. Okay. And communication, gosh, 2. Even on reflection, 2, I think is generous. It was just so long. There was just so much stuff that just didn't make a great deal of sense. And just because you throw enough mud at the wall, not all of it is going to stick. So I'd stand by my original mark, which is 13. The IB thought I was being a bit mean and gave it 15. Okay. Delegates, you were very generous and you gave it between 17 and 21. A good rule of thumb is if you're looking at an IA, does it feel like a 7? Does it feel like a 6? Does it feel like a 5? You know, all these are considerations at the back of one's brain as we are moderating. So I will keep an eye on any questions from IA2. I knew this would happen. Time will get away from us because there's so much to get through. And as I said at the beginning, if you're just watching this like as a straight video, it probably won't make a great deal of sense. I know that I'm flying through the IAs pretty quick because I'm assuming that everybody has seen these IAs before and read them. Again, they are linked under the video, or will be very shortly. Okay, so last one. What's 15 in terms? Oh, sorry, thank you. Let me know. No problem. What's 15 in terms of 1 to 7? Lana, can you explain? I'm not quite sure. Right then, IA3. So delegates thought that was, everyone thought that was a 2, near enough. A quarter of people thought, nah, let's give her a 1. Exploration, loads of people thought that was a 5. Quite a few people thought that was a 6. Exploration. Analysis, everyone thought that was 5 to 6. Gosh, you like this IA. You like this IA. Evaluation. You thought, that's 5 to 6 as well. Oh my gosh, you love this IA. And communication. 3 to 4. Right, so the low score from delegates for the primary data traffic light IA. 2, 5, 10, 12, 17, 20. And the high score is 18, 22, 20. You thought it was a full score, 24. Wow. Right, so I'm just looking at the questions. My email, if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a contact email on there. As a delegate, I believe I would have, you've already got my email. If you were a delegate, I'd have emailed the IAs to you. So please look at the contact on my YouTube channel. Janique, to get a 2 for PA, I guess you mean PE, is a pre-trial a must. I would say a pre-trial is worth its weight in gold. If a student says, I threw my experiment together, put my experiment together at 10 degrees and 100 degrees, and 10 degrees, it was way too slow, it took a week. And at 100 degrees, it was way too quick, I couldn't even time it. So therefore I chose 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Brilliant. What fantastic personal engagement. Do that. Put a load of references at the end, and then you've got personal engagement, 2 points. Simple as that. Or respond to the method while you're doing the experiment and say how you responded to the method. That would also be fantastic. What is the boundary to get a 7 in IA? You can Google it, just Google it. I think it's 21 to, it might be 20 or 21 to 24. There we go, 20, thank you, John. So 20 to 24. John, I noticed you also asked, how do you get systematic error for a database? Great question. Great question. Size font, as long as it's legible, Laura, it doesn't matter, okay? If it's illegible, it fails, okay? Schools normally come up with that policy themselves, okay? I can see a number of scores being bandied about. Somebody just please, I'm obviously doing the live stream, somebody just Google IA descriptors, scores for grade boundaries. I'm sure someone will know. It is freely available on the internet. Okay, so IA3, we're all on familiar ground. We all feel better. And it's a classic reaction, the traffic light reaction. No, there's no spacing, there's no font size, there's nothing. It just needs to be legible, readable, and discernible to an intelligent reader. The IB would not say that. Yes, correct, Michelle, thank you. So this IA, all the delegates thought that this IA was definitely a level 7. Consistent decimal places, consistent decimal places. If you look at my how to get a 24 video or how to smash your IA, the pandemic edition, you look at quite a lot of attention to detail on decimal places. You'll probably see it in this IA that I'm about to do now. Now this student has chosen a classic reaction. There's nothing wrong with doing a classic reaction. In fact, many teachers like them because they work. And a reaction that works is a big relief. Often when a student comes up with a wonderful research question, and I had one recently, and he may be in here now, I'm sure he'll make himself known if he is, and he was trying to extract limonene using steam distillation, and it was a fantastic idea, and we we're going to change the strength or the polarity of the solvent. John D, yes, thank you, mate. And look at the amount of limonene extracted based on the polarity of the molecule, and it was all quantified. It was beautiful. But steam distillation takes hours, and for primary data, 5 data sets in triplicate, we'd have been there for months doing this thing, months. So a tried and trusted and working experiment is a good way to go, particularly if you're pushed for time. I'd recommend it. So freely available on the RSC, tons of classic experiments, Royal Society of Chemistry. This student has taken a classic one. They've got some good balancing, they've got some good equations, we've got some nice chemistry. This is good chemistry, okay? They've used chemistry, they've got academically referenced, it's good academic references, it's not Quora or any other nonsense that's out there. She's got the T2G EG, degenerate, non-degenerate d orbitals, explanation of crystal field splitting diagram, and a nice discussion of crystal field splitting, so that's nicely just on the edge of the higher level syllabus. She's got some chelates here, beautiful discussion. Arrhenius equation, great for IA, fantastic. LNK 1 over T, off you go, beautiful, level 7. She's got a couple of little small errors. It was almost quite hard to actually mark her down on this one. Just decimal places there. The instrument stopwatch, plus or minus 1 second. I still see schools giving us 0.01 second. Please just stop doing that. It's the uncertainty of the operator, not of the stopwatch. Control variables, they expect to see about 6 if they want top marks. And this student has used a table, which is great. What's the control variable? How is it controlled? And what did you do? Beautiful, beautiful. Tick, tick, tick. She missed out some uncertainties. She did adapt her method here. She's adapted the method. That shows great personal engagement, which I've just wrote there. She's got the volume of the catalyst, and she's also put in her uncontrolled variables. I'm not sure if everybody does this. I started this a few years ago, where students clearly couldn't look at uneven heating or atmospheric pressure, humidity, whatever it happens to be. You can't control it. Don't say you're going to, because you can't. But showing you're aware of it is an uncontrolled variable. I thought was a great thing to do. Kicks myself why I wasn't doing it years ago. Inconsistent decimal places in her glassware, and twice she's done that. 1 and none, and 2 and none. Methodology. The methodology just comes from the RS. I think it's the RSC, this one. It might have been University of Canterbury, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just a standard method. Again, inconsistent decimal places, a bit of nitpicking, but it's going to mark it down. She did modify the method a bit, so that shows clear personal engagement. She changed it to herself, and the May 2020 report again says don't put pictures in, but don't put big pictures in. It says a small picture like this showing what she did. I think that's great. I like that. Safety, ethical, environmental. Again, we're on familiar ground here. Primary data IA, beautifully done, wonderfully executed. Data table, no decimal places in the uncertainty, no decimal places in the data table. 1 decimal place in the temperature, plus or minus 0.5. So every first decimal place must be 0 or 5. Is there a recommended format for the report? Laura, did you get the rubric for assessment? That's kind of got a reasonable guide. There is no recommended format in quick answer to your question. It does scare me as a moderator when I get this is personal engagement, this is exploration, this is analysis, this is evaluation. You can do that, but personal engagement is throughout the IA, exploration is throughout the IA, analysis and evaluation, yes, you perhaps use those as titles, and communication is throughout the IA. Okay, so it's up to teachers to decide, is the quick answer to that question. So this is a nice data table. If you want to know more about uncertainties, look at my uncertainties video on my internal assessment playlist. Qualitative observations. See, this is one of those golden, wonderful kids that ticks. She's actually taken the rubric, the feedback rubric, which is not mine, which has been sent to you. It was from the IB. And she's just done everything that's on there, and she's gone tick, 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 tick. And it's cookie cutter approach, but it hits the criteria. Okay. A bit of uncertainty, inconsistency here. 1 decimal place, no decimal place. She's used standard deviation, and the examiner's report said don't use standard deviation on such a low number of samples, so that's probably not appropriate, so we're going to mark her down for that. But that graph's quite... What do we think of this graph? Okay, what do we think of this graph? Is that a straight line? Is it a line of best fit? Is it a curve of best fit? She's put error bars on, which is great. You don't have to do error bars, we all know that. But if you do them, that's pretty good. The maximum minimum gradient, that's good. She's got her R squared value for fit, and I believe she talks about it in there. It's a pretty good graph. It's pretty good. Uncertainty on the axes, I quite like that. And she's calculated K. She's assumed it's first order. I couldn't find out where she got the information for first order. Again, explain the chemistry. If you're assuming something in there, just explain it quickly. A couple of sentences would have padded it out a little bit. She's done reciprocal of T, 1 over T, T to the -1. She's put that in the data table. And then she's done rate of reaction. So she's done 1 over S and reciprocal of time to get rate. So she's got average rate, not instantaneous rate. Think about that. Uncertainty table, look at that. Is there anything wrong with that? Yes. The absolute temperature. Uncertainty is first decimal place, and there are no decimal places. In the readings, terrible, I know. Okay. She's got a nice graph here, LNK 1 over T, but I can't see it. Again, maybe I need to speak to my optician. If it was on screen and I was moderating for the IB, I would blow it up. But the resolution is such that it's really difficult to see. And I don't know, can I? Is that 9, 6? And I'm not sure what the quantity is. So please make sure graphs are clear, legible, and interpretable by your moderator. Activation energy calculation, classic, which is nice. She's got it down to 58 kilojoules per mole. Seems pretty good, I quite like that. She talks about a standard deviation again. Okay, she's tried it. There's a reasonable high level of precision here, which is hard to defend, but we're not going to mark her down just yet. Good treatment of uncertainty. Impact of uncertainty was good. Process data. She's on page 12 here, so she's pushing it. Uses data to support the research question. She clearly states the research question. Always state the research question. She's quantified her errors. She's talked about the slope. She's talked about the gradient. She's talked about the error bars and the magnitude of the error bars. This is good stuff. She calculates the activation energy, and she's compared it. I believe she did compare it with the actual activation energy for the reaction and put a percentage error. And then this is an example of an exemplary evaluation, I would say. It's just a little bit short, but we'll talk about that shortly. We've got two systematic, 2 random errors. I think then she stops. Yeah, then she stops. 2 systematic, 2 random errors. What was the effects on the data, and what's the suggested improvements? That's beautiful. John, 1 over T to get rate is too simplistic using marks down by examiners. No, John, no, not at all. In fact, if you look at the guidelines to examiners, and the examiner's report, I think it might be 2019 or 2020, one of them, it clearly states that even if you're averaging, that's sufficient data processing. Okay, so I used to mark that down actually. Good question. But no, 1 over T is absolutely fine. As long as you've done the uncertainties, you've done some data processing. I know it's simple, but it works. It hits the criteria. No problem with that whatsoever. Lano, I'm also doing activation energy, but since I cannot find the order of my reaction, it's okay to use 1 over time as rate proportional to time. As long as, yep, you can use that as long as you discuss it and say it, or if it depends. I'm surprised you can't find it. If it's a classic reaction like this one, you can pretty much find it. Further investigation, and then a nice bibliography there. So she's got lots of references, put lots of work into that one. So, the moment of truth. You're going to think I'm a meanie now. I put it through as 19. 19. So that's 2 beneath the lowest from delegates. And the IB only gave it 17. I thought they were a bit mean that day. It goes back to moderators are human beings. Okay. Maybe I didn't put enough notes within the IA to support my marks. Maybe it was my fault. We all think that. We all reflect, don't we? Okay. But yes, I agree, Vinny. I agree. 17, giving it just a 6 is unfair. She did, as I said earlier, she took the whole rubric, went through every line in it, made sure she ticked every box. So what could she have been marked down for? As I said, I was nitpicking. I really was nitpicking as I went through this. The decimal places, the bits of text missing, things like that. So there's a couple of number errors could knock her down on exploration, maybe 5 out of 6. Analysis confuses instant and average rates, and standard deviation not appropriate. I'd say it was the analysis and the evaluation, because the evaluation was actually quite low in terms of the number of systematic and random errors, and there was no real quantification in terms of the magnitude of them. So she plotted the error bars. I didn't say it, I was suggesting that maybe a straight line would have given her the whether the error bars went through the maximum and minimum gradients, getting my words together, and if they didn't, then clearly there are more systematic errors and all that. So that sort of level of treatment would have given her the higher marks in the evaluation. And then communication, I've probably been a bit mean, so probably 4 out of 4. So 17 to 19. Okay. So when I'm marking, I'm sure we all do this. If it's definitely complete, 2 or 6 or whatever, but often we find ourselves, we're on a borderline between 2 potentially, like 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 5 to 6. Who knows? The guidance says if more of the text supports the higher band, give them the higher band. But trust me, even we can see from delegate responses here. I'm a moderator for 5 years. I still get marks up and down, plus or minus 2 each year. Okay, and I'm not, if I'm marks down plus or minus 2, I think that's intolerance. I'm quite happy with that. Don't know what anybody else feels, but if I put in a kid at 19, it comes back as 17. I've been on the kid's side. Apart from in this one, I felt that was, dare I say, bloody unfair. Yes. Okay, so the moral of the story is the dark arts of moderation still exist. The best way, your best defense against the dark arts of moderation, is to really look at that examiner's report, make sure everything in the examiner's report is done, adhered to, complied with. Look at the rubric, which I've shared to you, the guidelines to examiners given to moderators. Look at the exemplars. There's now 4 or 5 different database IAs on my site. There's certainly how to get a 24 on both database, which came back as 21. I think I've discussed that. I might need to do a video about that one. But anyway, it's still a 7. Database, which was a 7, and I've done one on how to get primary data as a 7 as well, which this one should have been pretty close to. But that is what we got. I thought it might make people feel a bit better knowing that even the moderator gets moderated. Okay. Hi Richard. The examiner's reports, I'd look at 2020 and 2019. I've done videos on May, but you don't need to look at the videos. You can just go on to IBIS and you can look at the examiner's report in the library section. Cumulative, I would, 2019, 2020, mate, I would look at those two in conjunction. And of course, I have videos on both of them on my little channel. So, I'll hang about for a few minutes. I want to go get my dinner shortly. So, thank you all very much for listening. Apologies, it was at rapid fire pace. As I said at the beginning, it would make much more sense if you looked at these IAs. I hope that you have. I will upload the marks, the marked IAs underneath the video. Probably not today, probably tomorrow afternoon. And if you've got any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Please bear in mind that I seem to be getting a torrent of emails from kids and teachers at the moment. So I'll do my best to answer them all. But just bear with me for a few days, because I do have a family and a job as well to do. Okay, so I hope you found that useful, guys. Don't forget, if you want to say thank you, that's wonderful. If you want to subscribe, smash that subscribe button. That's even better. All right, hang about a few minutes for any more questions, guys. Can't believe that was 65 minutes. All good. That looks like we've got, we had 185 people watching that. So clearly it's still a major concern and a major issue out there. And I sincerely hope that we get some more exemplars from the IB of what a 24 database actually looks like. Thanks, Laura. Much appreciated. Good, man. Okay, Laura, enjoy the sleep. No sweat. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm out of here. See you in the IB Chemistry Teacher Facebook's group. And thank you very much for your kind comments. Best wishes. Stay safe. Catch you later.